Hare Krishna. So welcome to everyone. My gratitude again for being here, and my appreciation to all of you for arranging such a wonderful retreat. And I take the permission of His Holiness Sachinandan Maharaj, Hari Parashad Prabhu, all the Vaishnavas. It's always difficult. I look out and I see devotees all senior to me. I will try my best to share with you as a service. We have a very wonderful topic that we are going to be discussing. It's a little awkward because there's some slides here and I'm sitting here, so we want to give your neck some exercise. So every now and again you may have to just switch over and look on this side. Srila Prabhupada writes, Krishna's Leela, either in Kuruksetra or Vrindavan, the same thing we should know. Krishna came to this world, of course, to establish religion, yada yada hi dharmasya. But ultimately, beyond that, Krishna came to have loving exchanges, loving pastimes with his devotees. Therefore, Krishna was in Vrindavan for 11 years. Then after that, Krishna went to Mathura for 18 years, and then after that Krishna went to Dwarika for 96 years, and in between that Krishna also visited other places, and one of those other places that Krishna visited was Kuruksetra. And therefore Kuruksetra is a holy place. Kuruksetra had been a holy place since Satya Yuga, as we were mentioning yesterday. But we will go more into why Kuruksetra is so significant. But first, let us orientate ourselves. Whenever we go on a journey, whenever we get into the car, we have to know where we are, we have to know where we're trying to go. Then we can work out the steps in between. We got lost on the way coming here. No complaints about the driver. It was very nice. But at one point we realized we need to use the navigator. So in life, we have to always navigate ourselves. We always have to remember where we're going. Srila Prabhupada is very interesting. He introduced Jaya Radha Madhav for all the devotees to sing before class. If I'm not mistaken, in 1971, maybe 71 or 72. And it's very, very significant that we sing this song before we discuss anything, because we realize all of our discussions, all of our Hari Kirtan, our Hari Katha, our Seva, our Prachar, everything that we're doing is because we're trying to go back to this place, Vrindavan. Vrindavan is a holy place. One of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers writes very beautifully. He says, Vrindavan is a transcendent spiritual world that most people may never have conceived of. It's a place in which God loves his devotees more than they love him, in which God seeks his devotees more than they even seek him, in which God needs his devotees as much as they need him. He said in Vrindavan, God is more human than superhuman. He's more natural than supernatural. Vrindavan is a place in which the full character of God comes out. We often take it for granted, Vrindavan, Krishna. We've heard it. We heard it since day one. But this is actually a conception of God, a conception of the spiritual world that most people have never conceived of. Once there was a joke, it had the biblical verse, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And underneath it, someone had written, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was no. Because that's people's conception of religion. God means no. God means rules. God means restrictions. God means something very formal, ritualistic. Vrindavan breaks all of those conceptions. Here we are in Germany, even Nietzsche, who said, God is dead, also, you may or may not be aware, also said, I will only believe in a God who knows how to dance. So most people have never conceived of a God who knows how to dance, a God who knows how to smile, a God who's bursting with character, color, charisma. Yesterday, Hari Parashad Prabhu beautifully quoted, Raso Ve Saha. Yes, God, Krishna, is the reservoir of all pleasure. So this is very, very beautiful. For some moments, we can always just look at a picture like this and just remember the incredible revelation that we've received. Vrindavan is a place in which even Krishna's words get contradicted. Because Krishna said, Ye yatha mam prapadyante, as they surrender unto me, I'll reward them accordingly. But after seeing the love of the gopis, Krishna said, Napareye ham niravadyasam, I can't repay you. You've made me contradict my words. I can't repay you, I can't reciprocate with you. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Vedaham samatittani vartamanani charjuna. I know past, present, future, I know all living beings. But then Krishna saw the love of the gopis, the love of Radharani, and said, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what she feels. But no, I know everything. No, I don't know. Again, Krishna's words are contradicted. Krishna says, Mata parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. There's no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me, as pearls are strung upon a thread. But Krishna looks at the gopis and he realizes, I'm not independent. They've controlled me. Aham bhakta paradhino yashvantantra. I'm not independent. They have made me completely dependent on them. Krishna's words contradicted again. Krishna said, Ishvara Parama Krishna, I'm the supreme controller. I control everything. But when Krishna was at a place called Paitha, not too far from Govardhan, and he was playing the part of Narayan, and he tricked the gopis and said, oh, you want to find, oh, Krishna, he went that way. But when Radharani came, Krishna couldn't control himself. He couldn't maintain his disguise. He had to again reveal his form as Krishna because her love conquered him, controlled him. So in so many ways, the love of Vrindavan, the love between Krishna and his devotees in Vrindavan is inconceivable. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he describes Radharani's inconceivable love. He said Radharani's love is completely pure and at the same time crooked. Radharani's love is all pervasive, but at the same time always expanding. Who can understand this type of love? So we are trying to approach this land, Vrindavan, and therefore for some time, you can see here, we have to actually deeply understand what is Vrindavan consciousness. If we want to go to Vrindavan, if we want to enter the realm of Vraja, then we have to understand what is that consciousness that the devotees there embody. Because without that kind of consciousness, without that kind of devotion, how I will be able to go there? And so, broadly speaking, we can say there is the conventional devotee who has something called Lokika Shraddha, just a worldly, cultural type of faith. Then there is a committed devotee, one who is taking up really the practice of Krishna consciousness with some substance. But then there is the confidential devotee. And for some moments, it's important for us to understand what is the distinction between all of these. And there could be many ways to look at it. The first way we may want to look at it is that the conventional devotee is more focused on their identity, the social position, the externals of whatever they're following. Whereas a committed devotee is taking up the practice, sadhana bhakti. Rupa Goswami says like that, no, that Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. They're using their senses now actively to serve Krishna. But in confidential devotion, these things are there, the identity, the process of Krishna consciousness, but they to some extent go to the back. And Krishna's personality, Krishna's charm, Krishna's wonderful name, His qualities, that immediately begins to pervade their mind more than anything. For a conventional devotee, they're driven, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, bhaya, asha, by fear and desire. The committed devotee has a sense of duty, practices out of a sense of understanding. This is good, this is needed, this will purify me. But the confidential devotee is driven by love. We can begin to map. You see, when we look at this chart, we will see elements of everything coming into our spiritual journey. Whenever we look at anything like this, it's not black or white, that we're in column 1, 2, or 3. But we can begin to look, where is my devotion going? What trajectory am I on? Am I going from left to right? Am I going from right to left? Am I stagnant? It begins to help us understand whether we are actually orientating our consciousness towards Vrindavan. The conventional devotee is interested in rituals, but the committed devotee has the knowledge, the understanding, so the ritual is done with more depth. It's not just an empty act, but it carries meaning, it carries purpose. But for the confidential devotee, there are no rituals. Everything is natural. They don't do it for a purpose. They do it because they're driven by their innate enthusiasm and desire. The conventional devotee says, yes, Krishna is part of my life on a Sunday, on a day of the week, or in a part of the house, or in a section of their life, or in a part of their social circle. But for the committed devotee, everything, yad karoshi, yad ashnashi, yad johoshi, dadashi yat. Krishna becomes part of every part of their life. But then for the confidential devotee, can there be anything higher than making Krishna part of every part of your life? Can there be anything higher? Yes, there can be. Because for a confidential devotee, they enter into Krishna's life. Krishna says, Madchita, Madgata Prana. Madgata Prana literally means their lives enter into me. Their lives come into me. They actually lose a sense of their own life. They're now living in Krishna's life. The confidential devotee gives something to Krishna, isn't it? 1 for Krishna, 2 for me, 2 for Krishna, well, 1 for me at least. The committed devotee gives everything to Krishna. Yes, there were disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur who used to, Grihastha disciples who used to go to work and give their entire pay packet to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and whatever he wanted to give them back for their maintenance, they accepted. There's a very high level of surrender. So what can be higher than that? Can there be anything higher than giving everything to Krishna? Can there be? Well, there's a blank space there. That means there is. What can be higher than giving everything to Krishna? Krishna gives it back to me. Mamatam. I give everything to Krishna, but Krishna is mine. This is the spirit of the devotees in Braj. Krishna is mine. Everything is for Krishna, but Krishna is mine. A high sense of possessiveness. The conventional devotee, Krishna is subservient to me. They are asking always, Krishna is the cosmic order supplier, the port of call in times of want and need. But the committed devotee realizes, no, it's not about what Krishna can do for me, it's about what I can do for Krishna. In other words, they place Krishna above them and become aham dasyam, I am a servant. But in the spirit of confidence, then there is intimacy. Can you see now, we begin to paint a picture of what is Vrindavan consciousness. For most of us, we are trying to orient our lives and become here. Become fixed in being a committed devotee, isn't it? But it's explained that as we become or endeavor to become a committed devotee, there's two things we have to be very, very conscious of. The first thing is the tendency to slip back into being conventional in the way we carry ourselves as devotees. So that's the first thing as we strive to be committed devotees. But the second thing as we strive to be committed devotees is we have to engage time, energy, effort, attention into trying to develop a more confidential, more intimate relationship with Krishna. And for the devotees who do this, they try to establish themselves in committed Vedi, sadhana, bhakti, and at all times being conscious not to slip into being conventional, and at all times being conscious to try to embrace a higher level of naturality and intensity in their devotion. They are the ones who will begin to orient themselves towards Vrindavan. And so even before we begin this journey of going towards Vrindavan, we have to understand the place, the mentality, the mood, the bhav or the emotion of the place that we're trying to reach. Otherwise, there's no possibility of going there. So this is the first thing I wanted to begin with as we move towards Vrindavan and go on this journey. Because this is a seminar, and normally in the Bhagavatam class in the morning we just speak. But because we have a special license here, we're doing a PowerPoint and we're having a discussion. So at certain points I may just open it up and see whether you may have any comments, any discussions, just so we're going on the journey together. And at any point, if you do have a question, then you can please put your hand up, or if you have a comment you would like to make. I'll just pause there for a second. Does anyone have any questions on this, or any clarifications, or anything you would like? Yes, go ahead, Haripu.
Thank you. I was wondering if we see that Krishna is part of my life, Krishna is in all part of my life, I enter into Krishna's life. I was wondering if the committed devotee already entered a little bit into Krishna's life or not at all, and he really has to be like in the confidential to be part of the life of Krishna.
Yes. Yes, as we know, the stages of devotion are not linear. So even, for example, just to backtrack, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talks about Shraddha to Prem. Ado Shraddha, Tata Sadhu, Sango Tha Bhajana Kriya. So he explains there's 9 stages that we go on from initial faith to pure love for Krishna. And if we look very, very closely, then we begin to see that these stages are not, separated. There's a flow over from one step to the next. Just like before the sun rises, you already see the sun rays. So there's some sense in which before the sun even rises, you're already seeing the sun because the sun rays are there. So similarly, when one is, for example, at the stage of bhajana kriya, it's not that there's no ruchi. There is taste. Because already we're getting a glimpse of that. But only when that ruchi becomes prominent enough as a major part of your life will we say someone is on the stage of ruchi. And it also works the other way. Even when we're on the stage of ruchi, does it mean that we don't do sadhu sangha? No, we do sadhu sangha. But our sadhu sangha now is of a different quality to when we were at the stage of sadhu sangha. So therefore, yes, even the one who is a committed devotee, already they are entering into Krishna's life. That is why Srila Prabhupada gave us the deities to worship. That is why there are 8 artis in the day, and every arti is marking a time in the transcendent realm when Krishna is doing something. So yes, Mangala Arti. Why so early? Because Krishna wakes up. Why 7 o'clock? Because yes, Krishna is taking his breakfast and going ready to go out. Why 12:30? Yes, because that's the time when Krishna and the Gopas are somewhere near Govardhan, maybe somewhere near a kund. and they're all bringing out their lunch boxes and sharing it with each other and stealing each other's items. Already when we're worshipping the deities, we're already trying to enter into that. It's interesting, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami went to Vrindavan, and he was immediately loved by all the devotees, especially in the Radha Govinda temple. So he thought, what can I offer them as a gift? And the beautiful gift that he gave them was Govinda Lilamrit. He gave them a beautiful book. He wrote them a beautiful book explaining all the different things that Govinda Ji does at different times of the day, so that when they would be doing their puja, they could do it with that kind of meditation in mind. And after he wrote that book, then he got the epithet Kaviraj, the king of poets, one whose writing has the power to melt even stone-like hearts. So yes, the committed devotee is to some extent entering into Krishna's world. Every time we come into the altar, we're entering into Krishna's world. Every time we come into the Dham, we're entering into Krishna's world. But this really means to enter and to begin to see everything from Krishna's point of view. You see, the main thing about a confidential devotee is that they have entered Krishna's world in the sense that Krishna has become the center. For us, we're entering some parts of Krishna's world, but still we're the center. So we are in Krishna's world, but we're almost like intruders. Have you ever felt like that? Sometimes you go to Vrindavan and you think, I'm an intruder. I don't belong here. Actually, I'm not supposed, but Srila Prabhupada was very kind. He opened the door. He opened the back door. But an intruder, because we don't have Braju consciousness. So yes, sorry, that was a long-winded answer. But yes, already some elements are coming there. Yes, so we are trying to go towards Vrindavan. But what we are going to do over the next 2-3 days is we're going to stop. Before we get to Vrindavan, we're going to stop at Kuruksetra. And yesterday I was mentioning Kuruksetra is a very, very special place because we can see Kuruksetra in 3 dimensions. Kuruksetra in these 3 dimensions give us 3 very, very important lessons if we want to enter into Vrindavan. The first dimension of Kuruksetra is to see it as a Yuddha Kshetra, a place of battle. The second dimension we can see Kuruksetra in is as a Dharma Kshetra. Dharma Kshetre Kuruksetre Samaveta Yuyotsava. Dhritarashtra says, yes, Kuruksetra is also a Dharma Kshetra, a place of religiosity. And Kuruksetra is also a Viraha Kshetra. Viraha or Vipralamba means separation. So it's also a place of separation. And as we go through these different dimensions of Kuruksetra, we'll begin to start understanding what it means to qualify myself to go to Vrindavan. One of the main things Srila Prabhupada often used to say was, first deserve, then desire. Of course, we could also say that when we desire deeply, then we work hard enough to make ourselves deserving. So the other side could also be true. But the point is we have to qualify ourselves. And these lessons in these 3 dimensions of Kuruksetra help us to understand what it means to qualify ourselves. So the first dimension is we want to look at Kuruksetra as a battlefield. What does the battlefield setting of Kuruksetra, what does that have to do with Vrindavan? Is it that you learn some fighting skills in Kuruksetra so that you can fight in Vrindavan? Like, what is the connection? It's very, very interesting. So first, before we look at what that connection is, I just want to read from the 3rd verse of the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is perhaps one of the very first things that Krishna says to Arjuna while they go in the middle of the battlefield. So you can repeat after me. Glebhyam smagama partha Metatvai upapadyate Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam Tyaktvatishta parantapa Klebhyama partha Netatvaya upapadyate Kshudram hridaya daurbalyam Tyaktvatishta parantapa. Krishna says to Arjuna, O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. Krishna doesn't mince his words. Very strong. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. Arjuna is bewildered, Arjuna is baffled, he's completely confused, he's looking at the battlefield and he's saying, I want to walk away, I want to leave. This is Arjuna who said, if someone ever tells me to put my Gandiva bow down, I'll kill them. The same Arjuna, Gandivam Shramshate Hastat, from his hand, the Gandiva bow is slipping. This means when the Gandiva blow is slipping from Arjuna's hand, it means that Arjuna's determination, Arjuna's strength, Arjuna's hunger for life is being lost, is slowly slipping away. So Krishna comes in and tells him, give up your hridaya daurbalyam, give up your weakness of heart. Put your hands up if sometimes you feel you suffer from weakness of heart. Yes. Weakness of heart is there. Can you tell me some of the things which are the weak? How does your weakness of heart manifest? You can shout out a few things. Laziness. Lack of discipline. Fear. Procrastination. Victim mentality. Doubts. Yes. If you look at a lack of love, if you look at all of these things, to some extent they are manifesting in Arjuna's character. And therefore Arjuna wants to walk away from the battlefield. Krishna is telling him, you have to do your dharma. You have to be a warrior. Here, Srila Prabhupada writes, let's read the purport. Arjuna was addressed as the son of Pritha, who happened to be the sister of Krishna's father, Vasudeva. Therefore, Arjuna had a blood relationship with Krishna. If the son of a Kshatriya declines to fight, he is a Kshatriya in name only. And if the son of a Brahmana acts impiously, he is a Brahmana in name only. Such Kshatriyas and Brahmanas are unworthy sons of their fathers. Therefore, Krishna did not want Arjuna to become an unworthy son of a Kshatriya. Arjuna was the most intimate friend of Krishna, and Krishna was directly guiding him on the chariot. But in spite of all these credits, if Arjuna abandoned the battle, he would be committing an infamous act. Therefore, Krishna said that such an attitude in Arjuna did not fit his personality. Arjuna might argue that he would give up the battle on the grounds of his magnanimous attitude for the most respectable Bhishma and his relatives. But Krishna considered that sort of magnanimity mere weakness of heart. Such false magnanimity was not approved by any authority. Therefore, such magnanimity or so-called non-violence should be given up by persons like Arjuna under the direct guidance of Krishna. The very, very first, one of the main, very, very first lessons in the Gita is Krishna is teaching us on the battlefield, you have to give up your weakness of heart. Unless we give up this weakness of heart, unless we arise, unless we embrace the challenge, unless we embrace the chaos around us and learn to act in a spiritual way through that, there is no question of movement towards our goal. Therefore, when we're talking about the battlefield, the Yuddha Kshetra of Kuruksetra, then actually what we're talking about is the battlefield of life. Our acharyas explain that Shastra can be seen on 3 levels. Shastra is literal. They are literal events, they are literal people, they are literal histories and places that are being described. So Kuruksetra is a literal place and the battle is a literal event. But the acharyas also explain that Shastra can also be seen didactically. In other words, there are always lessons to learn. There are things that we can absorb from the Shastra that help us to navigate our life in a better way. But not just that, the Shastra can also be seen in a metaphorical way. Now sometimes devotees are confused about this because it seems Srila Prabhupada spoke out about looking at things metaphorically. For example, Srila Prabhupada criticized the famous commentator who said the field of Kuruksetra is like the body and the 5 Pandavas or the 5 senses. So Srila Prabhupada spoke out against that. But we have to understand Srila Prabhupada, he was speaking out against that because the commentator was trying to remove the literal and simply establish the Shastra as metaphorical. And that kind of interpretation is deviant and unhelpful. But when we, in a mature way through Guru Sadhu Shastra, see the Shastra metaphorically in such a way that it then helps us to embrace and worship and approach and love the literal personality of Krishna, then it can be useful. And therefore, when we're talking about the battlefield, we're not just talking about a physical place, but we're talking about a metaphor. Basically, all of us are on the battlefield. All of us are in the battlefield of life. This is what Srila Prabhupada says. We may also take this material world as a battlefield of Kuruksetra. Everyone is struggling hard for existence on this battlefield, and at every step there is danger. Put your hands up if you feel like you're struggling. Very good, you're in the right place. Yes, we're all struggling. It's such a struggle in this world. One time in the Brahmacharya ashram, we were having a debate, a very serious theological debate. Are devotees allowed to play football? So everyone got their, computers out. Everyone's looking up on Vedabase, like what's the tattva, what's the siddhanta on football? So everyone thought, yes, Krishna was playing football with fruits in Vrindavan, and someone brought up another quote, yes. Prabhupada said, yes, I used to also play football. I was the goalkeeper because I didn't like to run. And then someone brought up another quote, and Srila Prabhupada says, yes, life is like a game of football, but we think we are the players actually with the football. So yes, that is the reality. This world is a battlefield, and we're being hit, we're being knocked, we're being tossed here and there by the waves of material nature. Sometimes it feels like it's too much. The Kurma Brahmana said to Mahaprabhu, I want to leave. The waves of material life, I cannot tolerate them anymore. Just like Arjun wanted to leave the battlefield because he said, I can't tolerate this anymore. So what is Krishna telling them? You have to become a warrior. You have to become a spiritual warrior. There's no question of going to Vrindavan unless we become spiritual warriors. There's no question of going to Vrindavan unless we develop the strength and resilience to deal with the struggles of life. It's interesting, Srila Prabhupada, when he set up ISKCON, it's almost like he employed this military terminology. The temples are military bases. The books are bombs. The one who's giving out the service is the commander. And when you write a letter, you tell the other devotee what camp you're in. It's interesting that Srila Prabhupada is almost like this military terminology of ISKCON. And maybe in that military terminology we lost a bit of heart and it became a little too military and not enough heart. Yet we might want to consider that even in that military terminology there is something deep to learn. Vrindavan is sweet. Vrindavan is charming. Vrindavan moves the heart with so many beautiful emotions. But we cannot go there until first we become a spiritual warrior and learn how to deal with the difficult material world that we're in. And so, today I just want to reflect with you on what it means to be in the battlefield of life and how being a spiritual warrior qualifies you then to go to Vrindavan. Now we could say, broadly speaking, there are 3 battlefields on which all of us are fighting. Yeah. The first battlefield we can say is the battlefield of the soul. Okay, I'm just going to draw here a little bit because then it helps you to picture it in your mind. The first battlefield that we're fighting on is the battlefield of the soul, and I'll come to what this means. We can say the second battlefield is the battlefield of the Sangha. Sangha? Battle? Warfare? Really? I'll explain what I mean. And the third battlefield that we're fighting on, we can say, is the battlefield of society. Now these are the 3 broad battlefields on which all of us are fighting. Now one thing to understand is that the nature of the world is that everything is always being pulled down, isn't it? Like you have gravity, it always pulls everything down. So therefore the nature of this world is that there is always degradation. If one is not active, if one is not attentive, if one is not alert, then there will be degradation. And therefore, spiritual warriors are always fighting. Spiritual warriors are never inactive because there's a constant degradation going on. So if you become inactive, then immediately degradation will overcome you. So they're always fighting. Fighting against that degradation. Now the first battlefield is the battlefield of the soul. We can say this is the inner battlefield. Each one of us have an inner battlefield. What are we fighting with? All of us know. We're fighting with anarthas, isn't it? Lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, madness, illusion, all these things. Not just anarthas. We're fighting with upadhis. It's so easy to start identifying with our ashram, identifying with our position in this world, identifying with our abilities, gaining a sense of meaning through these things. Just 1 second, I'll come to you in a second. We're also fighting with doubts. Not just that, we're fighting with trauma. Isn't it? So much trauma from the past, bad experiences. We're fighting with confusion, bewilderment. These are the things which are constantly bringing the soul down, degrading the soul. So therefore, a spiritual warrior always has to fight. So the first fight we have is the fight against all of these things. Unless we engage in this inner battle, there's no question of qualifying ourselves in Vrindavan consciousness. The second battlefield is the battlefield of the Sangha. It's interesting that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, the spiritual institution is a necessary evil. It's necessary because without this Sangha, without this support, without this kind of network, how will we ever generate the enthusiasm, the strength to go back home, back to Godhead? But it can also become evil because as soon as you have an institution, you have power struggle, prestige, position, popularity, all of these things begin to compromise the purity of what the Sangha stands for. When you have a Sangha, then you also have disunity is possible. You can have conflict. And in this way, the spiritual warrior is not just fighting their internal battle, but they're coming into the Sangha of devotees and trying to fight against all of this to help maintain the purity of the Sangha. And therefore, each one of us have to be spiritual warriors to contribute to uplifting the Sangha that we are in, the communities that we're in. Because we're all connected. Two people were on a boat, and the person on the other side of the boat said, no, there's a hole in the boat, there's a hole in the boat. And the other person on the other side said, I don't care, that's your problem, it's on your side of the boat. No. A hole in the boat means there's a hole in the boat. And it doesn't matter what side of the boat you're in, everyone's going to be affected. Therefore, the spiritual warrior has a responsibility to come in as an agent of positive change. Sometimes we look around and we say, oh, ISKCON this, ISKCON that, ISKCON should be like this. And sometimes we also have to step back and think, I have to be the change. I have to be a positive contributor. I have to be the one coming in to try to lead by example. I have to do what I can to uplift. Therefore, all of us have to be spiritual warriors in the Sangha. And then we are all spiritual warriors in the outside world. Because the outside world, there is a perpetuation of atheism. Science tries to take God out of the picture. Economists try to take God out of the picture, saying we'll be able to be more prosperous without God there. Political powerhouses try to take God out of the picture, separate the God from the state. And therefore there's a perpetual darkness which is covering the society of atheism, trying to systematically take God out of the picture. And therefore the spiritual warrior is coming into society and always trying to bring God back in dynamic ways, in ingenious ways, in ways that relate and inspire people. We're all fighting. We have to fight. This world is a battlefield. And when we fight on these levels, in a spirit of being a spiritual warrior, it brings a strength, it brings a purification, it brings a type of grace and mercy which creates a transformation in the heart which then qualifies us for Vrindavan. The interesting thing is that the battles that we have in these arenas are also not isolated. Unless you fight the inner battle, unless you're constantly introspective about your inner battle, you can't really do much to help in the battle to maintain purity in the Sangha. If someone is not striving for purity in their own life, how can they be an agent of bringing purity into the Sangha? And the interesting thing is that if the Sangha is not embodying purity, how can we ever go into the world and try to bring purity into the world if we're not even showing that within the microcosm of our own communities? Sometimes people try to change society, they try to be spiritual warriors in society without fighting on the other levels. That doesn't work. We have to simultaneously fight on all of these levels. And so, if I say the word spiritual warrior, which person in ISKCON would come to your mind? We would think of Bhakti Swami, because he was someone who really made spiritual warriorship. He brought that to the forefront of our consciousness. And if you look at his life, it's very, very interesting, because he was actually the consummate spiritual warrior on all of these levels. On the inner level, he was such a deep thinker. I was once having a conversation with Kadamba Swami, and we were talking about different gurus, and he was saying every guru comes with a gift, and every guru has something special that they also pass on to their disciples. And so I was asking him about different personalities, and when we came to Bhakti Tirtha Swami, he said Bhakti Tirtha Swami's very, very special gift was that he was deeply introspective and deeply reflective, and he was able to pass that on to his followers. So yes, in the life of Bhakti Tirtha Swami, we can see someone who is deeply introspective, looking within the heart, coming face to face with anarthas. He would write very deeply revealing things that someone may hesitate to write in public. He was writing it, showing to the world how we must confront the demons within our own heart. Once he wrote this offering, it was like, when I read it, it was deeply shocking. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but he said, it was something to the effect of, and Srila Prabhupada, I will come in front of you and I will say, I have opened up this many temples, and then you will ask me, but have you given up sex desire? And then I will come to you and I will say, Srila Prabhupada, I distributed this many books, and you will ask me, but have you given up sex desire? And Srila Prabhupada, I will come to you and I'll tell you, I traveled the world this many times and helped this many devotees, and you will ask me, but have you given up sex desire? And he just kept on pushing this point, looking deep within himself, that what have I actually done to transform my own heart? Because he was such a spiritual warrior in the inner battle. But not just that, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was an incredible spiritual warrior in the Sangha, because he was a real community builder. He was like an ambassador of love. He was bringing the devotees together, and he was he made these very amazing classes in Mayapur, cleaning Srila Prabhupada's house, confronting issues in the society that no one else wanted to talk about, to bring about that purity. And not just that, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was such a spiritual warrior in the world. It's interesting that he was given the name Bhakti Tirtha, because Tirtha, I was mentioning yesterday, means bridge. And if you think about it, Bhakti Tirtha, the bridge of devotion, that's exactly what he was doing, because he was going out into the world, and through the language, through the ingenuity, through his dynamism, he was building bridges for people to connect with Krishna consciousness, for people to connect with genuine spirituality. So such a spiritual warrior. And if you read his biography, then it's very, very beautiful. The final part is explaining how in his final days he was completely orientating himself on Vrindavan. He became completely immersed in Vrindavan, in the emotions, the mood of Vrindavan. And we can understand he became qualified to do that because he was such a spiritual warrior in his life. And so I'm sharing this with you today as our beginning point. In going to Vrindavan, we need to become spiritual warriors, because this world is tough. This world is harsh. This world is full of obstacles. This world is painful. This world sometimes is shocking, the things that happen. But if we become overcome by weakness of heart, then we won't be able to continue on this journey to Vrindavan. We're not going to reach Vrindavan just by fighting. That's not what we're saying here. You can only reach Vrindavan through love. But while we're awakening that love, we have to fight. We have to fight the material energy. And And therefore, I very much like this prayer. I think this was written by Burijan Prabhu. I think one day he came out into the Govardhan area, and in the Govardhan area you see many sugarcane machines. And they put the sugarcane sticks through that machine, and there's a wheel, and it crushes the sugarcane stick and sugarcane juice comes out. And when he saw that, he wrote this prayer. May the hard, crushing wheel of life extract some humility from my offense-hardened heart, and may the nectar of that humility give rise to pure love for Krishna. So yes, the world is like a battlefield. The world is full of so many challenges. And unless we become strong, unless we become resilient, unless we learn how to turn that pain into purpose, unless we learn how to turn our problems into progress, unless we learn to give up the weakness of heart, we won't find that we get the real traction to develop this higher quality of devotion that qualifies us for Vrindavan. And so this is where I wanted to kind of begin our discussion as we talk about going to Vrindavan. Okay, I did see some hands, so let me take some comments and then we'll discuss further.
You mentioned that degradation in this life, when this world is automatically taking place, and activity is counteracting this. Yesterday we were hearing from Hari Prasad about Yukta Vairagya, and I'm still processing what I've heard, and also today what you said. Can you say more about this activity part, which is lifting us up?
As in, what activities are lifting us up, or?
Yes, and also Yukta Vairagya. Yesterday we heard, and I heard it first time actually, that real Yukta Vairagya is already pure. It's already, as I understood it, is already not attached in the first place to anything we have. For example, our body, we are very attached to our bodies, but we still use them to do service to Krishna. But it's not a real Yukta Vairagya, because Yukta Vairagya means we are detached from the things we use to worship Krishna. So, but I'm still attached to my body, especially, and to other things, but I still am using them. And I also use my attachment to specific activities to become free of degradation, to counteract degradation, and to become a devotee. So what kinds of activities, or are all kinds of activities, despite the sinful ones, able to free us from degradation?
Chaitanya Charitamrita is explaining, Krishna Surya Sama Hoya Maya Andhakar Yaha Krishna Taha Nahi Maya Radhikar. Krishna is just like the sun, and Maya is like darkness. Where there is the sun of Krishna, there cannot be any darkness. So in this world, there is a constant darkness which keeps enveloping the world. Dhritarashtra, when he was getting good instructions from everyone, then later on he said, all these instructions, they are like lightning. Because in that moment when something is said, there's immediate illumination. But the very next moment, I'm enveloped by darkness. So that's the degradation of the world. That we try to bring Krishna in, but somehow or other, the way the world is, because of our mentality, Krishna is constantly again disappearing from the picture. We bring Krishna in, but then slowly it's very easy for Krishna to disappear out of the picture. So when we're talking about activities which fight against this degradation, it means that the devotee is always trying to bring Krishna consciously back into everything. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagya Muchyate. What is Yukta Vairagya? Yukta Vairagya means to see the Krishna Sambandha, the relationship of Krishna in everything you do, everything you see, everything you're utilizing. In other words, if you don't see the Hari Sambandha, if you don't see the relationship to Krishna, then there's a chance you will misuse it for your enjoyment. And then you become entangled. And so Yukta Vairagya just means to act in such a way to consciously bring Krishna into everything. Therefore, Rupa Goswami says, Yena Tena Prakarena Mana Krishna Niveshayet. Somehow or other, this way or that way, bring your mind to Krishna. So the devotees then they find ingenious ways of how to constantly bring Krishna back into the picture. That's why Sangha is so important. That's why Shastra is so important. That's why the holy name of Krishna is so important. Because those are the things which help us to develop the consciousness which will bring Krishna back into everything. But the moment we're disconnected from Sangha, the moment we're disconnected from the holy name, the moment we're disconnected from Shastra, then you can understand definitely you will be disconnected from Krishna. And when you're disconnected from Krishna, then Maya. So we have to keep turning towards Krishna. Bhagavatam says, Bhayam dvitiya bhiniveshatasya dishadapetasya viparyayo smriti. Problem is, we've turned away from Krishna. Therefore, we're now absorbed in a second reality in which Krishna is not present. So the atheist, there's different types of atheists. There's a default atheist, people who just didn't think about God and therefore they're just atheists by default. Then there's philosophical atheist, someone who's an atheist because they believe in the Big Bang and so on and so forth. But a higher percentage of atheists are emotional atheists. They don't believe in God, not because it makes any sense philosophically, but just because something terrible happened in their life and they can't register it and appreciate that God's there. But there's another type of atheist which I think is even more common than all of these, which is the psychological atheist. And the psychological atheist is the one who says they believe in God, the one who even acts in such a way as though it seems they're worshipping God, but in their mentality have removed God from the picture, have removed God from the center. And so nowadays we sometimes can think that maybe I also am an atheist. Maybe I also am. There's a bit of psychological atheism within me. And then of course there are also transcendental atheists. And they're the members of the spiritual world in Vrindavan. Because for them Krishna is not God. Krishna is just a charming young boy. So yes. So this is how we fight against degradation, by constantly trying to bring Krishna back in. Fighting for that. The warrior is fighting to bring Krishna back in. Is that okay? Does that? Yes.
So becoming spiritual warriors on 3 levels. Sometimes we become so tired of fighting. Because if you fight this, then something else pops up. And if you fight that, then something else pops up. So sometimes we focus really on our internal demons, really try to fight that. And we neglect a little bit the preaching, and we neglect a little bit the chaos in society, spiritual society. And sometimes we are so much absorbed in preaching, fighting the society, that we neglect our internal. So how to really balance spiritual warrior, how to focus on the 3 levels.
Yeah.
In our level of neophyte consciousness, so how can we fight in a balanced way?
So it gets tiring to keep fighting. When will it? But I don't want to fight anymore. It's interesting, in the 2nd chapter of the Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come. knowing that it opens the doors to liberation. So it's interesting, at a certain point, a devotee starts to frame the struggle of this world in a different way. They start to frame the fighting of this world in a different way. They start to see all the chaos that they have to walk through in a different way, because they actually become happy. Like the Kshatriyas are happy when a fighting opportunity comes, because they know through this fighting the doors to the heavenly planets will open. And a devotee in the same way also knows at a certain level of advancement that all this fighting is good, because this fighting is taking me out of this world. This fighting is generating a fire which will burn up all my anarthas. This fighting is bringing a remembrance of Krishna. I like that. Devamita Maharaj once said, he said, Maya is like a dog that you're running away from. And as you're constantly running away from this dog, the dog chases you all the way back to Godhead. That was kind of nice way to see it. That, yeah, you see, like all of this, the material energy is pushing me out. You see, this hard crushing wheel of life is breaking my hopes, is breaking my faith in the material world. This hard crushing wheel of life is making me humble. And the nectar of that humility, that dainya, gives rise to prema. So the first thing I want to say is that at a certain level of advancement, we begin to start framing the struggle of this world, the battlefield of this world in different ways. Even Srila Prabhupada, after he was fighting that the Juhu case and everything with Mr. N, and it all got over, then Prabhupada, he just sat in his room and he said, it was a good fight. And someday someone should write a book about this. And of course, Giriraj Maharaj did. Prabhupada was constantly fighting. Prabhupada said, I was fighting. In Mayapur, I was fighting against my godbrothers. In Vrindavan, I was fighting against the caste Goswamis. In Mumbai, I was fighting against the municipality. In America, I was fighting against the deprogrammers. Prabhupada said, practically everywhere I went, people were fighting with me. But he had become advanced enough. He was that Mahabhagava who had that consciousness. Now we're not there. We want to get there. We want to get to where Queen Kunti says that, yes, I want the fight. I want the problems. We're not there. So then we can remember on the battlefield of Kuruksetra, they would all fight during the day. But the interesting thing is, in the evening at a certain time, everything would stop. And then they would all get together. And it's explained that they would even go to the enemy's camp. And then together in the evening, they would unwind, relax, kind of chill out together. And then the next morning, the conches would blow and boom, all over again for the fight. So therefore, yes, we can learn from that on the battlefield of Kuruksetra, if they were doing that, then on the battlefield of life, sometimes we do need a respite. Sometimes we do need time just to be away from the spotlight. Sometimes we do need to be away from the preaching ground. Sometimes, dare I say it, we may even need a break from the ISKCON world. Don't quote me on that one. I like Vrindavan because I feel like in Vrindavan, you even to some extent come out of the ISKCON world. We love ISKCON. ISKCON is Prabhupada's body. We're fully dedicated to ISKCON. But sometimes that institutional identity also can become very heavy. And so I like Vrindavan very much, because when you go to Vrindavan, it doesn't really matter what ashram you are, what institutional position you have, what responsibilities are, on your shoulders. Everyone comes as a beggar. Everyone comes as a beggar. I just need mercy. I need to develop this humility, that will give rise to prema. So we need a break. Sometimes we need a break. So yes, in the fight we should also take breaks. But then there comes a point. One disciple would ask the Guru, when will the fight stop? And the Guru says, the fight never stops. But at a certain time you begin to relish the fight. So we don't know, we can't perceive that. What does it mean to relish the fight? But a spiritual warrior is relishing the fight, knowing that it takes them to Krishna. I hope that helps. Yes. I think here there's a question.
Thank you so much for a wonderful, insightful lecture. I would like to go to the beginning when you were speaking about Raj Bhakti and Vrindavana consciousness. You said that the committed devotee is fixed in Bhakti. Could you kindly say something about the importance of being fixed in Bhakti and at the same time being able to adjust to the essence and in a natural and safe way develop the sentiments of confidential devotees? Because when we think of the prospect of what being a confidential devotee offers, it's very attractive. But sometimes we have the tendency of feeling ourselves more advanced than we are. And then we might think, oh yes, love, ultimately everything is about love. I don't need rules and regulations. So how are rules and regulations and following Bhakti helping us to develop these sentiments of confidential devotees?
Thank you. Sometimes we give the analogy that if one wants to be a poet or wants to be a writer and express their heart through the pen, then first they have to learn spelling. First you have to learn grammar. First you have to learn vocabulary. If you don't know vocabulary, if you don't know grammar, if you don't know how to spell, how you will be able to express your heart in beautiful poetry? It will be very difficult. Or if one wants to sit behind a harmonium and then just sing for Krishna, but you also maybe first have to learn the notes, and you have to, then you will be able to at one point just close your eyes without looking, and your hand will just move, and your heart will be moving your hand, and your voice will reach Krishna's heart. So in the beginning there's a sense in which if we don't go through that, what do we have? What substance do we have to offer? Therefore, yes, our acharyas are saying, Kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya sadhya sa sadhana bida nitta siddhasya bhavasya prakatyam ridi sadhyata. Sadhana bhakti is that which has the potentiality of bhav. Sadhana bhakti means it has the potentiality of bhav. So now your next question or your next part is coming as to how do we in a safe way begin to awaken that bhav. The first thing is that as we try to develop a more natural type of bhakti, our acharyas are saying it doesn't mean you give up the rules and regulations. So the progression is not I'm doing rules and regulations and then the next day I just give up those and now I'm in there's a sense in which you're doing the rules and regulations, and as time goes by you then begin to give more of your heart, give more attention, more focus on hearing about Krishna. It's interesting that when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was talking about Raganuga sadhana, Raganuga bhakti and that development, then he was basically putting the emphasis on the holy name of Krishna. In his time where people were giving Siddha Pranali mantras and Ekadasa bhavs, and gurus were telling their disciples who they are in the spiritual world and the 11 aspects of their identity, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, I give my disciples the Siddha Pranali mantra. Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarodapi Sahishnana. That is the Siddha Pranali mantra of the Gaudiyas, because he was explaining that it's that absorption in the holy name, Nama, Guna, Rupa, Leela, that Nama is the trigger which then awakens everything else. So as Vaishnavas, then we're beginning to try to give more attention and more emphasis. Prabodhananda Saraswati says, Yatha yatha gaura padara vinde. When you go deep into the oceanic character, the mood, the mission, the pastimes of Gauranga, when you dive deep into that ocean, then you will emerge from the depths of that ocean and find yourselves on the banks of Vraj, where Radha and Madhav will greet you. So we're going through Mahaprabhu, we're going through Nam Sankirtan, and what we're gradually doing is putting more emphasis and bringing more of that into all the things we're doing. Another very, very interesting thing is that Rupa Goswami actually mentions what is bhav. Shantiravyarthakalatvam viraktir manashunyata ashabandha samutkantha namagane sadaruchi ashaktistad gunakhyane pritistad vasati stale ityadayo nubhavyasyor jata bhavan kurejane. So he gives the symptoms of bhav. But it's very interesting, when you see Srila Prabhupada's lectures, he actually talks about the symptoms of bhav in a way that devotees can begin to try to emulate and try to live some of these things. In other words, a symptom of bhav, kshantir, extreme forgiveness. So then if we want to develop bhava bhakti, we try to develop that spirit. Avyarthakalatvam, a symptom of bhav is that you don't want to waste one moment of time. So if you want to develop bhava bhakti and move towards that, intensify and be more deliberate about how every moment of time is being spent. Viraktir, someone in bhav has a natural detachment. So you want to intensify bhava bhakti, start moving away from those things. Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulya, give it up. If it's not helping, learn to walk away. Whether it's relationships, whether it's attachments, whether it's situations, whether it's identities, whatever it is that doesn't facilitate, learn to walk away from it. Mana shunyata, becoming devoid of pride. What a beautiful way to intensify the development of bhav. Just try to become more humble. In every situation, to become a servant. When someone is struggling, to think, I have to be a servant, I have to help them. When someone is successful, to think, I'm a servant, how can we take them even further? When you're a leader, to become a servant, how can I help those under me to be the best they can? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, humility means the complete absence of an enjoying spirit. And so if you switch that, it basically means humility is the complete presence of the service spirit. Absence of the enjoying spirit means the complete presence of the service spirit. So like this, we don't have to think of development of bhava bhakti as something mystical in the Nikunja, Ratikeli Siddhai, and we're floating in the... Of course, this is beautiful, we're hearing about this. But there are very practical, pragmatic ways in which we can develop a heart which is having some bhav. And so the acharyas give us all of these insights, and ultimately, yes, through Nam, through the holy name of Krishna, that transition will take place. Yes.
Thank you very much for the class. The question is, how can we measure if our fight is successful? If we should measure it, how we can understand that we are doing correct actions in this battlefield fighting?
Yeah. How can we understand that we are doing the correct things in the battlefield, and that we're actually moving forward and progressing. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually our teachers have given us everything. For example, if you take a book like Srimad Bhagavatam, okay, then you can say Srimad Bhagavatam is basically the anthology of love. It's basically giving you the stories of the devotees who have developed the purest love in the universe. It's basically showing you how relationships of love take place. So Bhagavatam is the anthology of love. But then we have books like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami, and what this is the science of love. Because what the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu does is it actually shows you how then you can develop that love. Therefore Rupa Goswami says, Ado Guru Padashraya, begin with taking shelter of a spiritual master, and then all the angas of devotional service will open up for you, and if you perform them systematically, then this is the science of how to awaken love. But not just that, then what the acharyas do, for example, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur takes 2 verses from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and then he writes a book called Madhurya Kadambini. And what he does in that is he gives the roadmap of love. So he doesn't just say the science, but what he does is he explains what stage and what are the stages to that awakening of love, what are all the obstacles you'll face at each stage, what are the things that you'll observe within your being at each stage, what things should encourage you, what things should worry you. It's all there. So if we want to know whether we're fighting, whether we're fighting in a progressive way in which we're actually developing towards Vrindavan, love for Krishna in Vrindavan, then if we study these books, then we will actually be able to see there's a movement, there's a transformation. Krishna consciousness should be transforming us. The main difference between religion and spirituality is that spirituality transforms. And so there should be a transformation that we are observing within ourselves. So if we look closely, if we're introspective, and if we take the help of Vaishnavas who are also mature, then we'll be able to understand whether our trajectory is going in the right way or not. It's very clear. Just requires sincerity of purpose, study of Shastra, and Sangha of Saragrahi Vaishnavas, Vaishnavas who understand the essence. If you have those things, it will become very clear where I'm at, whether I'm moving forward, whether I'm just stagnant, whether I'm going back. Very clear. I see hands and I see the clock, the hands on the clock moving. I'm just thinking I'll just ask if Maharaj would like to make any comment or correction, or Hari Parshad Prabhu if they would like to. If you would like to, there's no...
Hare Krishna. Thank you very, very much. Very eye-opening and very intriguing. We are now very suspenseful. What else will come? You said there are 3 aspects of Kuruksetra. So this is now the Yoga part. I was thinking in relationship to being a spiritual warrior and fighting and all this of the Damodar Lila, where we learn that there are 2 things necessary to capture Krishna. One is our effort, and the second is the grace of Krishna. Not everything, Mother Yashoda could not obtain everything by her effort, but still she needed to give the effort to convince Krishna that yes, that to use this other Shakti where we agree to be bound. That is what I thought. And you have spoken very nicely about the effort, and I do know from knowing you and knowing your presentation, this is part one. So there will be more insights. But thank you on highlighting the effort. It's absolutely important, my dear devotees. Without showing Krishna this comes to Priya Bhagavatamrita, that you really want to obtain it, giving your best, going to there, giving really your best. Without this, Krishna is not convinced that you really want Bhakti. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. I had many reflections, but as you said, the clock is also raising its hand. The first thing that I liked very much was you mentioning how Srila Prabhupada critiqued those interpretations of the Gita which flattened the Gita into one dimension, that is only allegorical. And many times there is a tendency amongst some individuals, some devotees, to say that anything allegorical should not be accepted, it's just speculation. But there is also a precedent set by our acharyas, because in that very commentary on that first verse, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur compares the Pandavas to paddy and the Kauravas to
Weeds.
And Srila Prabhupada takes that analogy and translates it into English. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur composes Sri Krishna Samhita, wherein the entire 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam is interpreted in a sort of allegorical way. So thank you so much for that particular reflection. And second thing is, I really liked when you said that sometimes you need to take a break from the institution and go to Vrindavan.
Thank you.
I've often been thinking about this, and my reflection about this is that when all the designations that one has in the institution, when all the roles, when all the responsibilities, when all of that and all the prestige and everything that comes along with it is taken away from us, then the Vaishnavism that one has is one's true Vaishnavism. So thank you so much for bringing that reflection, and thank you so much for inspiring all of us. I'm very eager to hear, because I also have institutional battles to fight. I hope you will arm me with some good kavacha. I'll go back there. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Yeah, just that last point that someone explained it to me nicely once. They said, your spiritual life is like a boat and the institution is like the river. So if you interact with the institution in the appropriate way, then the river will take you to your goal. But if that river enters into the boat and it starts to dominate your entire being, then it will sink your spiritual life. And so there's a very fine line, in terms of our complete loyalty and chastity and dedication to the movement, and beyond that, or in addition to that, our very deliberate and orientation towards our relationship with Krishna, free of all designations. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Just a very short announcement. If there are no questions for today, I think we are all ready for a good fight. And it will actually extremely pleasurable fight, because the fight is happening just by hearing, and not only hearing, but drinking very delicious juice. The shikari juice is waiting for us. And this is the way we fight. Isn't it wonderful? So it will start at 11 o'clock today. Please all be there on time. And then from 5 to 6 we will have some Vrindavana Bhajan. And then after that, Sachinandana Swami will keep us in Vrindavan with beautiful kata. And I was just reflecting, we have the chance, we are ready to fight, but we have the chance to have actually such a wonderful devotees who are actually in front line. So we are actually very secure to go through the fight for this festival. Thank you all for being here. Please try to be here punctual at 11 o'clock. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Wonderful. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
His Holiness Swayam Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj ki